We're looking into the future. We're looking into the future. We're looking into the future.
I don't want to change the world. I'm not looking for a New England. I'm just looking for another girl. Someone get a message from Captain Snort that they better start assembling the boys from the front.
The revolution is never coming. Return to your homes for your protection. Watch your television sets for your protection.
Welcome to episode 49 of There's Still Time, the AFTN podcast. We're here today to preview the upcoming match between the Vancouver Whitecaps and the New England Revolution, taking place on Saturday morning. Our normal guest, Aaron Campbell, is off on assignment today, but we are joined by AFTN's Jay Duke.
Hello.
And we'll also be joined by Sean Donahue, who is of New England Soccer Today. As we normally do in the preview podcast, before we look back forward, we're going to look back a little bit. It's been a few days now since the Chivas Vancouver Whitecaps game. What were your thoughts about that game, the 1-1 draw?
Well, I've managed to get myself out of bed after that terrible viewing. And I've been able to now resume my life. Yeah, it was terrible. It was really a tough game to watch. I hope there wasn't people who were out there and watched their first ever Whitecaps game at home and went, oh, I should check this out on TV because it was so good. You know, what do you say? It's as good as the first game was. The second, that game against Chivas, was just as bad. As much as you can't plan a parade route after the first game this season, you can't throw it all out either after this loss. It was pretty poor. I think that they started to come on a little at the end. I thought there was some really bad performances, from some people I wouldn't have expected, such as Rio Coker. I thought had a bit of a stinker. I know he's maybe had some illness issues there. Fernandez was just atrocious, probably one of the worst out there, as well as Demerit. So it was really tough it seemed tough to get anything going out there. Hard to watch. It's going to make it interesting for this week to see what happens and whether Robbo is going to say, all right, let's switch it up, then you guys didn't do well enough, or whether he's going to say, I know my guys, they're going to bounce back after this, and we'll see, put the, more or less the same guys out there against New England and see what they have.
And one of the guys that was missing that we talked about that, might be missing because of injury was Russell Tybert. And I think he definitely there was a little bit of an impact there where there was a lack of working going on in the midfield, winning those balls. And guys like Laba and Rio Coker, who we expected to be better at that, definitely didn't have that support from Tybert. And obviously Fernandez didn't offer very much either. Yeah, he seems to be fit this week, so we'll see if that makes a big difference. You were mentioning on Twitter especially, you were not happy with Demerit. What was it about his game that really upset you in this Chivas game?
Well, I don't know. I'm with you, and I think Russell coming back is really going to help. That was one of the things that I think was missing last game. Miller looked really out of place. Even when Chivas was down to 10 men, nobody was pressuring the midfielders when they had the ball. They were allowed to walk through the midfield with it. So Russell, I think, will help that. As for Demerit, I like Demerit. I really do. I think he's a good character guy. He's a good leader. And I really do like those big crunching tackles where he flies across the screen and takes somebody out early in the game, sends a message. But man, you gotta first of all, if you're getting paid the amount he is and as oft injured as he has been, it's a big risk to have a guy like that on your team. And when he is there, you need to expect that he's gonna be really leading that back end. He's really gonna be taking charge. and he's the one who seems to be causing a lot of problems rather than solving them back there. The first 2 games of the season anyway. Quite a few times in that game he stepped forward when maybe it wouldn't have been very smart to do so, and missed the ball or missed a tackle or got dragged out of position, and then all of a sudden you have a 3-on-3 going the other direction and everybody's scrambling. So that's my biggest concern, is that he's really a high risk defender, and if he's missing, you're looking for a lot of trouble.
So those were our quick thoughts about the previous Chivas game. Before we dive into the New England Revolution, let's hear the thoughts of Carl Robinson at training on Wednesday. So you're facing a team that's struggled in their first couple of games. They're a dynamic, youthful team and everything. Yep. They were really attacking last year. Is it somewhat worrying facing them when they're haven't really found their stride, or is there something you can take advantage of?
I think they're a good team. I think they've shown last year that they have got a lot of talented young players. It's their first home game. They haven't played at home yet, so it's going to be a tough place to go. Playing against a good team who, players are probably still trying to find their form. So we've been there twice, Vancouver, and we haven't won there. So it's going to be a tough venue for us. We know that, but we're going and we're looking forward to it.
Do you want to stress to your team that this team is losing, maybe lacks a little confidence, in order to, step on them? Don't give them that time to settle into the game and everything. Maybe they also have those nerves in their first home game.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's important in every game you play. It's important you start well, and obviously they'll want to start well as well because it's their first home game after having 2 defeats. But, make no doubt about it, it's going to be a very difficult game for us, as it always is away at New England. But if we focus on us and perform to the levels that we know we can, then it'll be a very, very good game.
With the change of time zones, you're going to be starting at 11 o'clock in the morning. Do you see that as being an advantage because you usually train at that time, or could it be a disadvantage because you're not used to that over on game days?
I think it's a bit of both. Okay. I really do, and I'll be able to tell you a little bit more after the game, whether it's an advantage or a disadvantage. But we'll use it. But we do train at that time, so that is helpful. Having said that, obviously, different time zone is not great, but it's something we have to deal with. So we'll make sure we're fully prepared, and then hopefully we'll be able to perform on the day.
Talking about a revolution, oh no. Talking about a revolution, oh no. Talking about a revolution, oh no.
So those were the thoughts of head coach Carl Robinson on the upcoming game against New England. And right now we're joined by Sean Donahue, the editor at New England Soccer Today, which can be found nesoccertoday.com. Welcome, Sean, to the program.
Thanks for having me.
The Revolution, they're basically a very young and dynamic team coming into the season. There was a lot of high hopes. They've lost their first 2, although they're both on the road, so there is a little bit of leeway there. But they have yet to score a goal, and this is a team that is expected to score a lot. Is there a danger that these first 2 weeks could hurt the confidence of such a young team?
I think that's always an issue with a team this young. Towards the end of last season, they built up a lot of confidence going into the playoffs. They played really well. They started off the season poorly. I think part of the problem is some of the veteran leadership on the team, and Jose Goncalves, who obviously we'll talk about his issues later, but him not being in the lineup last week, that certainly affected the team, and he's the captain of the team, and if he's not happy, that can't be good for the team. They brought in a guy like Kobayashi, who adds a veteran presence, but there are a lot of young guys in this team. I think last year was a great experience for them making that run into the playoffs. Obviously they lost in the first round, but they did do pretty well against Kansas City, who were the eventual champions. They had their ups and downs last year as well, and that's certainly something they can learn from and carry forward to this season and try to turn around what's been a pretty poor start for the team.
Is there an issue behind the lack of goals? Is it a tactical issue, or do you feel the players are creating enough chances and it's just a matter of not finishing them right now?
I think in the game against Houston, after they were already losing, they did well creating a lot of chances, and they just couldn't finish them. Against Philadelphia, they didn't create as many chances. They had 1 or 2 good chances that they should have done better with. But I think part of that is, inconsistency in the lineup. Between the first game and the second game, they made 5 changes to the team, across the field. And that was something in preseason, too, where they didn't have a lot of consistency. A lot of that was because of injuries that kept happening and things like that. So I think consistency is a problem. They lost a guy in Juan Aguadalo who, really you base your offense off of. He was a guy that could do well holding the ball up top, could win long balls. He actually liked, playing with long balls at times. And you swapped him out for a guy in Teal Bunbury, who is another great player, good scorer, but he's a different type of player. He's not a guy that likes to play with his back to goal. he's like a guy that likes to combine going forward, short, quick passes, likes playing, facing goal. So that's an adjustment for the team, and the fact that they haven't had the consistency there. Kellen Rowe and Lee Nguyen have yet to play together, and they were so good last year forming that central midfield pairing. But neither of them have started this game at the same time at this point this season, so that's something that's definitely hurt them. So I think it's consistency and adjusting to Teal Bunbury. Those two factors have really hurt the team. But they did create a good amount of chances against Houston. They didn't create as many against Philadelphia as you would have liked to have seen them create. But I think that's less of an issue probably than the defenses right now.
Last year's Defender of the Year, Jose Goncalves, like you mentioned earlier, was not in the 18 last week. And he's obviously not, it seems like it's been reported that he's not happy with his contract. Was this something that just came up last week, or has this been boiling in the offseason and preseason and it just got to the point where Coach Heaps had to make a decision and keep him off the bench?
It's something that's been boiling up since preseason. There was an article that kind of came out of nowhere on a blog where somebody had interviewed Goncalves, where Goncalves brought up his frustration with the contract. He said some promises have been made that hadn't been followed through on, whatever. Essentially, it sounds like he wants more money. The deal was when they brought him over on loan, there was an option in his contract to buy him out and to have a 3-year contract. So they picked up that option at the end of the season. Obviously, he had a great year. He did anything he could to justify that contract. They picked it up. He was under contract for, I believe, 3 years from what I've heard. And based on last year's salary, factoring in Omar Gonzalez's DP salary, it would make him the second highest paid defender in the league. So obviously, it's not a small contract. $450,000 was what's been bandied about as the number there. But apparently, he wants more. He wants to be playing for the Portuguese national team. He even mentioned something about needing to go to Europe to make on the get himself in the books for Portugal and have a chance to play for them. Which I'm not sure how realistic that is at this point, especially with the World Cup coming up. Even if he was to go over there, or if that's just just saying something to try to get more money. But obviously he's not happy. Obviously, it boiled over last week for whatever reason. The first week he actually played and started and played pretty poorly. First 2 goals. It seemed to settle in as it went on, but you have to wonder if that was a distraction then, if that was part of the reason why, apparently Heaps had to talk to him this week and decided him out of the 18, if part of that was performance-based. But, this is something that's, we knew about for months in New England and didn't think it would lead to this right away, but apparently, now he's, for whatever reason, not playing. Heard from some side that he's willing to play, and other sides that, that Heaps gave him an ultimatum and he decided not to play, so it's unclear what exactly the story is there, but whatever it is, it's not good for a team that, misses their captain and their best defender.
What are the chances he starts this week, especially with Andrew Farrell having injury issues?
I haven't heard anything positive as far as anything getting resolved with this team and the issue there. So I would be surprised if he started this weekend because I'm not sure what's changed this week. But then again, there's still a couple days before the home opener, and with these injury concerns, you don't know. So right now, I'd be surprised, but something could change in the next couple of days. There's an article that came out over in Scotland today based on an interview on Monday where he said he's happy to play for the team and he likes it here and he thinks he'll be here for another couple of years. So it's just a very confusing situation in which both sides have said different things and something is missing. So it's hard to know what will transpire in the next couple of days. Right now, I'd be a little bit surprised if he was back in the lineup, but certainly wouldn't write it off yet.
Are there any other injury concerns going into this game? Do you think Rowe and you mentioned before Rowe and Nguyen they haven't played together yet? Do you think they'll play for the first time together?
I think they will this weekend. Rowe got some time off the bench in the last game. When finally started in the last game, so I think that the two of them hopefully finally be fit enough to start together, and that would be a huge boost to this team. And whether or not that means Kobayashi doesn't see the field from the start in this game, or who sits because of it, that's the question. They made so many changes last week. One of them was they took Scott Caldwell, pushed him forward a little bit, and put Andy Dorman as more of the defensive midfielder and kind of a more defensive-minded lineup in general. So at home, I'd imagine they probably will switch back to their more attack-minded lineup. Whether it's Caldwell or Andy Dorman remains to be seen. I think that's one of the issues that the team has recognized in preseason and throughout the season has been that the lack of kind of a hard-nosed defensive midfielder. The Revolution have a very creative midfield, but it's a very undersized midfield. With not a lot of defensive bite. They put Scott Caldwell in the defensive midfield position. He's a great passer, highest passing percentage on the team, but he doesn't, short guy, not like a guy like what they used to have in Charlie Joseph back when he was in his prime, a guy who wins lots of balls and intimidates the other team. They certainly don't have that. With Andy Dorman, they have a little bit more of that, but I don't really even think that's his game so much. So that's something they've been trying to fix. They don't have the right player for that role. So going to be one of them this game, but that's an issue. And I haven't gotten the latest injury report to know where everyone else is at on the team. Whether Sire Sen is closer to full fitness, because he was a regular starter last year, started this year on the bench due to the serious injury suffered last year that he's recovering from. But there's definitely a few question marks going into this game.
Okay, so again, based on what you've seen in the first 2 games of the season, like last season, they had a period where they weren't scoring. I think they went like 450 plus minutes where they didn't score a goal. Based on what you've seen this season, do you think the Revolution are capable of turning around quickly, or do you think there are some concerns in the lineup that might not have been visible when the season started?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is no Goncalves. He really changed their defense last year. If he comes back with the right attitude, ready to play, give 100%, so a lot of talent in the team offensively, many creative pieces in the midfield, a lot of options there to mix and match, and depending on who they're playing against. They got some impressive rookies in Patrick Mullen and Steve Newman, who we still haven't seen in one of these regular season games yet. So that's still another question mark, what we get from him. Then, of course, Kobayashi and what he provides. There's just a lot of creative talent in this team. I think that scoring goals will eventually solve itself. The question is, will the defense solve itself? And if Goncalves is gone, can they come anywhere near repeating what they had last year? Because you also have to remember they lost Matt Reese, who was great goalkeeper, veteran, one of the best in the league for many years. Great guy organizing the back line. Now they have the goalkeeper competition. Shuttleworth has been starting so far. He's been shaky at times. Long shots, which was an issue for him last year, continues to be an issue this year, where he'll get a long shot and bobble it, not hold on to it, not control it very well. Sometimes on crosses he's been a little bit shaky. I don't know whether it's a confidence thing or what. But, the combination of no Goncalves as their veteran in the back line and no Reese who is their veteran in goal, someone's got to step up and lead that back line. And as long as it's in flux and you don't know what's going to happen with Goncalves, it's harder to see that happening. I think that's the big issue as far as turning it around, is figuring out the defense.
There are a couple of former Whitecaps from last season that are on the line. Diego Kobayashi, you already mentioned him. And then there's also Brad Knighton. How do you think those two guys have fit, especially you just mentioning Shuttleworth struggling? Do you see Knighton, becoming a factor in the starting lineup?
Yeah, it's very interesting. At the preseason, they both switched off and on. Most people thought Knighton outperformed Shuttleworth. I was one of those people that thought Knighton really had a stronger preseason than Shuttleworth. I think most reporters, people covering the team, had Knighton penciled up as the starter to begin the season. So we were a little bit surprised to see Shuttleworth out there. The first game, it's hard to blame him too much for any of the goals that he gave up. But at the same time, there was some shakiness in other situations. Same with this game. Against Philadelphia, you actually thought he could have done more on that goal. And then, again, more shakiness on some long shots. So I feel like he'll probably get one more game, and I don't think that Heaps wants to really shatter his confidence by switching him out after 2 games. But at the same time, I don't think the leash is all that long, because they have a very capable keeper in Knighton, who I thought had a very strong preseason and earned playing time.
Going into this game, who are some of the players or some of the key factors that New England's going to be looking at, in their game against the Caps? You mentioned a few before, but is there anything under the radar that you'd probably highlight?
Yeah, I think the big key here is getting Fagundes more involved. He obviously had a great year last year, 13 goals, 7 assists. When he's had his opportunities, he's looked really strong this year, but he hasn't seen as much of the ball as he saw last year. Part of that was certainly against Philadelphia, where the Revolution didn't have much possession at all. Kind of an embarrassing amount of possession. The first half, at one point, I think they had 20% possession, which is just unheard of, in MLS in particular. So they need to get more of the ball and keep more of the ball. And, that will help solve that. But the other thing is Kellen Rowe, who was so instrumental last year. Getting him on the field, him and Diego combined really well. Diego and Juan Aguadero last year combined really well. If he can build the same sort of relationship with Teal Bunbury, that'd be huge for this team. Both creative players, both good goal scorers, and just finding ways to get him the ball more, which starts with the team having the ball more, is a big issue for this team if they're going to score more goals.
So I'm going to put you on the spot here. Who do you think wins, or is it a draw?
There's a lot of variables with the lineup at this point, so it's hard to say for sure. I kind of think that I saw Vancouver's last game against Chivas, which probably wasn't the best game of their season so far to see. They had a great start against New York. Warner's impressive against Chivas when they were up a man, although to get the draw. I think this is a game that the Revolution need to get at least a point out of. I think they're capable of drawing this game. I'm not sure they're going to have enough to win. If Goncalves comes back and all of a sudden that changes and he is ready to play, I could see them winning it. Without him, I think it may be a 1-1 or a 2-2 game is possible.
Let us know where we can find you online.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Sean, SEAN, Donahue, DONAHUE. And then, of course, my writing is at New England Soccer Today, which is NE Soccer Today. and I also run the New England Soccer Today Twitter frequently at Any Soccer Today.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Sean, for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So that was Sean Donahue of NewEnglandSoccerToday.com, breaking down everything you need to know about the New England Revolution.
It's finally the tables are starting to turn. Talking about a revolution, oh no. Talking about a revolution, oh no. Talking about a revolution, oh no.
So thanks once again to Sean for joining us and talking about everything about the revolution. We're back here with Jay. So Jay, the game coming up now, this is a chance for them to, I know it's early in the season, but a little bit of a redemption from last week's game. The team has been talking about that the coaches especially don't want to be too down on the players this early in the season. But is there a concern that if they don't show up for this one that, some doubt creeps in their mind?
I don't think so. I think it's probably a little bit early to be worried about what the image of your club will be for the season when only in Game 3. I mean, they had a dominant performance in Game 1. If they have two stinkers, yeah, you're going to say, hey, what the heck just happened there? And you're probably going to be leaning towards more that, we got to figure out what's wrong. But I think less concerning about what the result will be what kind of product we see, whether or not they bounce back with energy and you see them try and control the game and bring the game to the Revolution a little bit more.
Definitely, the heat's not going to be a factor in this game. It's going to be outside in the cold, and it's also going to be on turf. So there is a difference there from the last game. Who are some of the key players that you think will be important for the Whitecaps to kind of reestablish what they did in that first game?
Well, like we mentioned before, I'd actually like to see both Fernandez and Tybert both get a start again. I was pretty critical of Fernandez and thought that he was one of the worst last game, but I'd like to see him given one more chance. The only other option to that I think we could see is maybe have Mane come in his place, but I know there's been some issues with his fitness and slowly recovering from a back injury. I want to see Tybert and Fernandez back on the field in those wide attacking midfielder positions and have those guys put that pressure in the midfield and see if we can get that dominant performance out of Rio Coker and Lava again.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think Mane's going to be some time still until he starts. I would like to see him start because he seems to be very explosive, but it's a matter of will he go 90 minutes. Maybe they put him on knowing that he's only going to be able to play one half and they take him off at the half. I'd rather have somebody start off strong. One of the guys a couple of guys that I think need to play better if they get the starts, and depending on, we'll talk about the starting lineup, who we think is in there later. But Rio Coker and Lava, especially going up against a tandem like Kellen Rowe and Lee Nguyen in their central midfield, that's going to be very important because those two guys are very creative. They actually when they started playing with each other, they turned around the season for the Revolution. The Revolution at one point after their first game last year went 480 minutes without scoring a goal. And then they finally paired those two up in the central midfield, and that's when everybody remembers how they kept scoring goals, but there was a period where they didn't score, and they're right now in that period right now starting off 180 minutes to start the season. So Lava and Rio Coker I think are very important in disrupting whatever happens in the midfield. They played now 2 games in a row where they played teams that like to attack from the wide sides, and this one's going to be a central attacking team. They like to tackle from the middle and then maybe pop it outside, but they control the ball in the middle is the biggest thing for them.
And I think that may play into the Whitecaps' strengths. I think from what we've seen anyway, the Whitecaps are much stronger through the middle, and both defensively and offensively. But it'll be nice to see a team that we're not worried about all those crosses coming in from the wide side.
The thing is about them is they control the ball quite a bit, but their one issue this year has been lack of possession. Even against Philadelphia, they barely were able to hold on to the ball. There was like a wide disparity, especially in the first half of the game. That's something I think they will do. So, and the Whitecaps last week, they actually had more possession, but they weren't able to do anything with it. I think that's something they have to correct going into this game. They have to be able to attack and take advantage of the back line that's kind of right now in shambles, even though they only allowed 1 goal against Philadelphia. Philadelphia obviously took their foot off the pedal late in the game last week.
Yeah, and from all accounts, Philadelphia was just slicing them apart. And no offense to Philadelphia, but I don't really think they're an offensive juggernaut or anything. In the game before, Houston just dominated them with, I think it was 3 goals in the first half.
First 23 minutes.
Yeah, so I mean, they're certainly, even they're at home, and New England's going to be looking for a bounce back. I mean, they're off to a pretty bad start, and it's their home opener. So I think they'll be looking to bounce back, but certainly it plays well into the Whitecaps' hands, I think, this week. They got a good shot against the team that they match up well with.
I think another player that we should also mention is Diego Fogendes, who had a really fantastic season last year. He's only, I think he's still under 20, and he's had struggled obviously this year. He had a great partnership with Juan Agudelo last year. This year he's kind of teaming up with a guy like a lot of Canadians don't like, in Teal Bunbury.
Boo.
Exactly. And so I think there's probably some chemistry issues right now. I think he's going to be a guy that the Whitecaps really have to look out for. The Revolution normally play a 4-1-4-1, where Fogendes plays wide. Last week they played a 4-2-3-1, and Fogendes was playing it more in the midfield, but it all depends on where they put him. He normally moves centrally as well, so he'll become a striker all of a sudden, a withdrawn striker. So it'll be interesting to see where they put him and where the Whitecaps should actually look out for him, because he's one of the dangerous players, even if he's at a very young age. What about the time zone issue? I talked to Robinson about this in training on Wednesday. They're going to be playing the game at 11 o'clock, 2 o'clock East, 11 o'clock Pacific, and that's the time they usually train. So do you think that's going to be an advantage for them, like playing when they normally train? Or do you think that's going to be like something they're not used to, playing that early? They have to somehow, they're traveling on Thursday, so they maybe get one day used to the time zone difference. This will be the first time for a lot of those guys traveling west to east.
Yeah, it's going to be, it's certainly going to be a bit of there might be some growing pains for guys like Morales, who's used to not having to travel too far in leagues like Croatia and Spain, and now to come here and then have to travel, what is it, probably going to be like a 6-hour flight with a layover somewhere in the middle there, and the big time difference. Yeah, we'll see how the concern for me is how they start. I think that, if you're me, being a non-professional athlete, when I go out and play beer league hockey or whatever, when you have a late start or an early start, yeah, it feels weird when you get there. But then after the first couple minutes, you start to get used to it, and you're just playing again. So they'll probably be the same once they get into the rhythm of the game. The time won't necessarily matter as much. It'll just be maybe how quick they can get out of the gates.
So those are our thoughts about the Vancouver Whitecaps game against the New England Revolution. Now it's time for our weekly segment where Michael McCall talks about his 3 things that he's looking out for in the game. And obviously an appearance by probably our most popular member of our previous show, Predictapooch, in a segment called Trio Time.
Trio!
Too loud.
Trio!
I said that was too
I
loud.
want a trio and I want one now.
Yeah, well, we all do, man, but listen.
Not one, not two,
I mean-
but 3 things in it.
Listen, could you just cool it?
Not one, not two, but 3.
No 3 things are quite as good together as a trio.
New England is never an easy place for any teams to go in the West, and I don't really see it being any different for the Whitecaps this coming Saturday. There's 3 key areas that I think we need to have a look at. One is the bounce back ability. Which team is going to bounce back more from recent disappointments? New England have lost their first 2 games, but they've been on the road. This is their first game at home. They're strong at home. Do they have what it takes to turn it around right away and stop the rot and get their first win of the season? Or can the Whitecaps bounce back from a really disappointing result against Chivas, where they didn't play as a team, they just had no creativity for most of the game, and they dropped a point and they struggled against 10 men? Whichever team is going to bounce back best is going to get the 3 points from this one. Another key element to look for is the revenge factor. A lot of ex-Whitecaps seem to come back to haunt them, and Lee Wynn for New England has already shown that. Now, with the Revolution now, you have Wynn, you have Brad Knighton, who's unlikely to start, but if he does, you know he's going to have a blinder of a game, and of course Daigo Kobayashi, really poor for the Whitecaps. What is he going to show for the New England Revolution? If these guys are really up for it, and also you've got Teal Burnbury, who gets a lot of stick from Vancouver and Canadian fans. These guys are going to be up for it. If they can raise the level, that's something to watch out for, and it is something that could come back to burn the Whitecaps. And the third thing in my trio of things to watch out for is this left wing. From watching New England this season, they've struggled when teams are attacking up the left wing. Very noticeable last week against Philadelphia. A lot of Philadelphia's best success came when they attacked up that left wing. It's going to be very important that Jordan Harvey gets into this game, makes some runs forward. I think we could possibly see him get his first goal of the season. He's going to need support there. So whether it's Fernandez or Miller and whatever players are going to get picked to play on that left wing and support Harvey, they need to get going. They need to attack. They need to get some crosses in from the left because New England are quite weak there. And if the Whitecaps can attack, that's definitely going to be a way that they can get through. A lot of ifs, lots of buts. I see it being a really close game. If the Whitecaps can capitalise on what I've said, I think they can get a draw out of it, maybe even sneak a 2-1 win, but I think it's going to be tough on the road, and my tip is for a New England win. It's Predictapooch time. So far this season, Predictapooch is 2 for 2, having predicted the Whitecaps win over New York and the draw in Chivas. This week he's going for the outcome of New England Revolution, Vancouver Whitecaps on Saturday morning. To help with the predictions this week, we've decided to use some of Predictapooch's toys and not balls like we have in the previous weeks. So what we have for him are 3 toys to chase. There is Raccoon, Overly Long Strange Polar Bear, and the Severed Head of Humphrey. Now, if he brings back the Raccoon, that is going to be a New England win. If he brings back the Polar Bear, that is going to be a draw. And if he brings back the Severed Head of Humphrey, that's going to be a Whitecaps win. So we're going to throw the toys down the hall for him now. What will he bring back? Polar Bear, Raccoon, or Severed Head? 3, 2, 1. Go fetch, Predictapooch! And he's going down the hall. He's gone for Humphrey's head, but no. Oh, he's squeaked. He's gone for the squeak. It's the Polar Bear. But he's put it down. He's put down the Polar Bear. He's back to Humphrey's head. Now he's looking at the Raccoon. He's very indecisive this week. This is an indication it could be a close game. Come on, Predictapooch, bring back. Come on, fetch, bring. This is a disaster this week. He just cannot make his mind up at all. Instead, he's now gone to his toy box and he's trying to bring back... He's brought back the orange dumbbell. It wasn't what was thrown. I'm not quite sure if that's going to be a match abandoned or what, but we're still going to persevere with this. This is Radio Gold or Radio Nightmare. So, Predictapooch, go fetch. He's gone back to the 3 that we threw. Go on, fetch. What's he going to get? He's going back to his toy box. Oh, this is just sheer disaster. He's sniffing over his toys. I think we're going to stop this and actually go for his balls. So, what we have for him this week is an orange chuck-it ball. If he brings that back, that is going to be a New England win. We have a normal, old-fashioned, run-of-the-mill tennis ball. If he brings that back, it's going to be a draw. And we have a special, super-duper green combination ball that has it's got about 6 different kind of balls attached to it. Obviously, that's a special ball, just like the Whitecaps team. So if he brings that back, that's going to be a Whitecaps win. So let's see what he's going to go for. Chuck-it ball, tennis ball, or green contraption. So we're going to throw it down the hall now. Are you ready? 3, 2, 1. Predictapooch, fetch! He's gone down the hall. The things are bouncing everywhere. He's chasing after the tennis ball. The tennis ball seems to be what he's wanting. He's kind of gone round the corner now. And he's brought back the chuck-it ball. Now, that's a disappointment. He has predicted a New England win. Predictapooch has gone for the home win, New England win. Will he be 3 for 3? We'll find out by Saturday afternoon.
Trio! Too loud.
Trio!
I said that was too loud.
I want a trio and I want one now.
Yeah, well, we all do, man, but listen.
Not one, not 2, but 3 things in it.
Listen, could you just cool it?
Not one, not 2, but 3.
No 3 things are quite as good together as a trio.
So that was Michael McCall and Predictapooch. And as you heard there, Predictapooch predicting the first Whitecaps loss of the season. So, Jay, before we do our own predictions, let's talk about the lineup. I think there will be some changes this week. There was one change last week. I think the guy that got taken out last week because of injury, I think he comes in for sure. I think Tybert definitely should be a starter. I think they missed his work on. We talked about it earlier. I think they missed his work in the midfield.
Yeah, I agree, and he does give you some width as well. I know he's not necessarily an out and out winger per se, but that was one of the things is they couldn't really work the ball through the middle, and they had troubles getting it out wide until Manny came in. So I think he helps you there.
And another thing is, I think it helps as well is that they in game they can change to a 4-4-2 if they want to. They had to substitute Rio Coker out and put Manny in order to switch to a 4-4-2 because they didn't have the people to play out wide and everything like that in that formation. So I think Tybert being there, I think that helps him out. I think Maddox again had a really hard-working game. I'm not sure how well he'll do in New England in the cold weather, but I think he should be in the starting lineup up top.
Yeah, I know. You know, anytime you're a striker and you don't score goals, you're going to catch a bit of flack. But over the 2 games, I don't know if he's probably been the most consistent over the 2 games. He's been the best player probably out of the last 2 games. So
he set up the winner against New York, and he set up the tying goal against Chivas. So he's earned the Whitecaps, if you think of it that way. Maybe not with goals, but with assists, he's earned up 4 points.
Certainly.
I think the other 2 guys, I think Morales. I know Morales obviously didn't have the great second appearance, the first start, compared to what he did against New York, but I think he should be up there. And I think the other spot is either Fernandez or Miller. I think there is a chance that Miller might not start because I just don't think I think he's better off if he's not going to be starting up top. I think if Maddox is the guy, I think he's better off coming off the bench and being that striker that can get a late goal or get a winner or a tying goal late in the game.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think we're still going to see Fernandez in on the left. I think Robbo probably likes what he brings and what he can bring with. He's a little bit more comfortable with the in-tight passing and that kind of thing with Morales. I think we're going to see Fernandez come back in and he'll get another shot to keep his spot in the starting 11 cemented.
So let's go to the guys that are going to be protecting the back line. We mentioned it before, Rio Coker did not have a good game. He had the cold from what was reported. And Laba was working extra hard in order to make up for what Rio Coker wasn't able to provide because of that. Maybe he was pushing a little bit too much. I think Laba's definitely a starter. There's been a lot of talk about Gershon Kofi on Twitter at training, really impressing the team and really working hard and everything. Do you think there's a chance that Kofi comes in the lineup and Rio Coker takes a break? Maybe they say he's still not fully fit from the cold.
Yeah, that could be. I could certainly see it. At this point in time, I just don't think that he's going to want to do that unless Rio Coker really is still suffering from an illness, a cold. I think you're going to see Rio Coker spell back in. I wouldn't necessarily be against Kofi going in there. I've always been a big fan of his. I do think it would be a bit of a step down from what we normally get out of Rio Coker. But I think especially those two, now's the time we want to form a partnership back there between those 2 guys and get used to them protecting those back 4.
The back line is going to be relatively the same. I think the fullbacks are not going to change. Obviously, right back because I personally don't like what they have on the bench for there. But left back, I think Jordan Harvey hasn't really hurt the team this year, and I mentioned so far. I think Andy O'Brien, he came off with a bit of an injury. I'm wondering if they give him a break from traveling out east and put in a Johnny Leveron who might be over his concussion issues. Or do you see that backline staying the same and they want some continuity there?
Yeah, I think they're going to stick with the same back 4. And if anybody gets moved, I would hope it's not Andy O'Brien. So, yeah, they're probably going to keep the same back 4.
Then, obviously, the keeper position, I don't see, definitely not. Keeper was not the issue last game.
No,
I know Usyk had a bit of a, bad goal to let in the first game, but He made a couple of good saves there, especially in the second half, keeping it a 1-0 score when he challenged Barrera coming off his line and everything. So let's get down to the game itself. What do you think? How do you think the Whitecaps, do they rebound from that 1-1 draw, which was disappointing, and play a little bit more like what they played against New York, or what do you think of the game?
This is a really tough one. I really don't know how this one is going to go. If you told me, if I fell asleep right now and woke up Sunday morning and you told me that the Whitecaps got trounced 4-0, I wouldn't be that surprised. And if you told me that they just throttled New England, I wouldn't be surprised either. So it really could go any way. I'd like to think that they're going to have a bounce back performance. I don't know if that's me thinking with my head or with my heart, but I think they're going to be a little bit better. As always, for whatever reason, MLS in particular, it's so tough on the road. I don't know why it's so difficult on the road, but I still, so they're going to have some problems, as you would expect on the road in the MLS, but I expect a decent performance and a much closer game.
So what do you think? Give me a number.
I don't want to answer. We'll say I'm going to go with let's go with a 2-2 draw.
Okay. I think that the Whitecaps will be able to score this week. I think the back line, unless they're able to resolve these off-field issues like immediately, I think their back line is going to suffer. I think they will let goals in, but I think also they will score some. I'm also with you on the score line. I think it's 2-2 draw. I think the Whitecaps come home with 2 draws on their 2-game road trip.
Which really, if you think about it, it isn't the worst thing that could happen. If we come back, at the beginning of the season when we peg in 2 draws on these 2 games, that's not the worst thing to happen. So let's just consider if they had a stinker of a game and still got a draw, let's consider it a learning experience.
Totally agree with you. So before we sign off, Jay, where can we find you online?
I'm at J_Duke on Twitter.
And obviously occasionally writing for AFTN.
Very occasionally, yes.
You can find me, Steve Pander, at Whitecaps Beat on Twitter. You can find us writing at Canadian Soccer News at AFTN.ca. So that's episode 49 in the books. The Whitecaps will be taking on the New England Revolution on a Saturday morning. It's an early start at 11 a.m. And the game will be on CTV this week. And obviously Team 1410 on the radio dial. And don't forget to look out for our own post-game podcast, which will be available most likely on the Saturday night, maybe early Sunday, where we'll be breaking down the game. And we'll obviously be joined by Michael McCall at that point. So until then, thanks for joining us and enjoy the match.
When you're listening in some far-flung corner of the globe to the World Service of a Saturday afternoon, crackly reception, interference, cosy, marvellous. Somehow comforting, isn't it? Legendary names, fathers and sons on the terraces, cheesy peas at half-time, pint for dad, mum's at home making the tea. Everything's all right with the world, isn't it? Saturday afternoon is football.